Up next, we have Mark Field. Mark, set up a little bit so we can get your head in the middle of the screen there.
It's been a long week. Hi, Christopher.
No worries. Perfect. I invited Mark to do this because I think Mark has a slightly different perspective and he has a more global view, and he's worked at retailers that bring something interesting as well as consulting. So if you haven't seen, Mark and I did an interview actually live from the PLMA trade show floor that's available on the YouTube channel as well. You should go watch that. That was super exciting because thousands of people milling about as we do an interview. Made life exciting. Mark, let's start with, tell us about Mark Field. So who are you, and how are you related to the industry?
Yeah, no, thank you, Christopher, and delighted to have the chance today. So I guess it's a career of two halves. Originally born in the UK, did 25 years international food manufacturing, really supplying into the major retailers at a time that Tesco's were really pushing on with their private label strategy. And I've really seen them grow and really seen from a supplier perspective the advantages it can have of playing that role in their growth strategy. And then with Wesfarmers acquiring Coles in Australia, the other half of my career was leading the private label team for Coles during their transformational year. So almost 10 years in Australia, helped achieve the brand to be a $9 billion brand that it was. And when I left, about 32% penetration and delivering 1,200 new products a year across a portfolio of brands. And
So for those around the world who may not be familiar with Coles, give us that snapshot of the Australian market.
Yeah, no, great question. So Australia is a very unique market in that it's only got two major retailers. So the UK, where I'm talking to you from today, 10 or 12 leading retailers, as you probably know. Australia's only really got two. It's got Coles and Woolworths, yeah. Between them, there's 65% of the grocery market. Aldi have been in the market now for probably 15 years and are a significant part of the market. They're probably around 12 to 14%. But the two major players there that have been trading for over 120 years are Coles and Woolworths. Yeah, and as I say, 65% is very clearly significant and probably quite unique when we look at it from a global scale. So Coles is probably one of the best case studies of a business that's gone through a retail transformation in the last 50 years. And they achieved something like 37 consecutive quarters of growth because of the turnaround that was led under the rest of the team and myself. So fantastic journey. But as we ASX listed, which was almost 5 years ago now, you come from a transformational business to business as usual. And then I wanted to do something different and work across the supply base. So I launched Prof Consulting, which is obviously how we're talking today. It's a business based in Melbourne, Australia. And at the end of last year, we opened a similar business in the UK as well, which I think is quite unique. It enables us to go and walk the streets of London, which is where I am today, and talk to you about what's happening across the UK retailers. And then 3 weeks ago, I was walking the streets of Melbourne and Sydney, and I could talk to you about what's happening in those markets. Very similar in many cases, but very clearly different customers and different customer needs as well. And probably on a different stage of their private label evolution, it's fair to say as well, Christopher. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So Australia, to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, please do, lives in that spot between the UK, between England and the United States. And as far as development and those, it's picked up the best of the UK. And then still, honestly, I know there's been a number of great Americans who have been retailers over there as well. It gives you a unique perspective. Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of private brand and innovation. And I know we have a few things to talk about, so I'll add to the stage as appropriate, but let's just talk about your thoughts there.
I think one of the things that's most important if we look at the Australian market for a sector there is how do you build trust and how do you build excitement? And I'm a big admirer of Loblaws, as I'm sure many people on the session are. And you look at how they came up with the President's Choice Ultimate Chocolate Chip Cookie, the decadent cookie there as you have it, and what that really signified for them as a retailer around food being important. When I joined Coles had a product such as this, but it was a very hard product to find. And it wasn't something that we used to inspire the team members internally, which meant they didn't have the love for private brands that you need to have internally, because employing 120,000 people as Coles did at the time, you need to have as many of those as being ambassadors for products as possible, because ultimately, the key strategy with private label is having a product that consumers can only buy within your store, that becomes a draw card for them to come and buy a strong private label offer that they really connect with. And while they're there, they buy the brands. So many people say to me, oh, Mark, it's private label at the expense of brands. I say, no, actually, it's private label to help grow brands. And we often talk about it as a neighborhood. The brands are your neighbor's kids and you want them to do well. But private label's your kids. And if you're a bit competitive, you want them to do slightly better. But together they play nicely, yeah?
And I think Obviously, Dave Nichols and Loblaw and this cookie is just the example and the lesson that never goes away. And honestly, Gene was just talking about that kind of elevating the mainstream. And this is a 30-year-old example,
Yes,
more than that, 80s, 1980s. It's an old example, but it's one we continually bring up with retailers as they seem to forget the lesson of, hey, really what Dave Nichols did was say, let's create a great product, let's taste it, let's touch it, and let's be proud of it, and then let's tell the world.
absolutely, absolutely. And I still think today many retailers don't have that platform where they're really clear what are they going to stand for and what's their food value. You get tied up in the price game, which is obviously really important, and it can be quality at the expense of value. And I think it's how do you bring it all together that you inspire people and say, actually, we are going to have some products that meet different customer needs, but we're also going to have some products that are just absolutely amazing. Yeah. And
Well, when I ask retailers what those products are, what's your chocolate chip cookie? You'd be shocked how many times they can't tell me.
yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And I think that's why, for me, it's a story that we repeat many times, because I think for a business to be successful, that's what you need. And then the ability then to share that with the supply base around what success looks like and how it grows brands, the pieces start to come together.
It's startling. Next up, I know we have the redesign of Just Essentials.
Yeah, and the reason I put this in, Christopher, is because I think private label is a journey. First of all, if we were starting up a new supermarket in a new market today, we've got to have the value position covered. Yeah, and I think what we are seeing, this is the example from Asda, as you said, that launched earlier in this year. 3 weeks ago, when I was down in Australia, Coles and Woolworths have both rebranded their value offer again. It wasn't that long ago we were saying, do we really need a value offer nowadays, or do we let the bar rise up to the next level and just bring that into what used to be called the mid-tier? They've really gone hard because of the pressure on inflation and the consumer finding things very tough, and reinforcing the customer engagement around that value offer. So as a retailer, you've got to be really competitive on your private label strategy, and you've got to cover your initial bases. And I think it's super exciting at the moment, the way retailers are trying to bring the life back into that range, but also how they're bringing the depth into the range as well. I think one of the challenges there, of course, is how do we make sure the products in this category are differentiating from the products in the next tier up. But I would go, you're starting off that strategy, let's make sure we've got the value offer and we cover all our bases against a key competition, and then move into the ultimate or the decadent. Don't go with the ultimate or the decadent before you've got your core lines covered through the value offer.
And that's exactly what Gene was saying. Honestly, very often with this strategy, I am not a fan of it. Honestly, I think there are a lot of pretty dismal value tier brands that are hideous and terrible product, and they should just go away. And I like to upset a lot of people by saying that. And it doesn't have to be. As this is a great example of they made something bright and cheerful. I haven't tasted the product, but hopefully they did the quality work to make sure with Asda is that big on that product, it's not going to disappoint me even at the very inexpensive price. What are the watch outs here? What should we be concerned in looking at this value tier?
I think you're absolutely right to call out quality. And the majority of retailers and manufacturers that we talk to now are taking Aldi quality as being the key benchmark in that space for them. But they're also saying, what's the leading brand in that space? And let's make sure we've got rigor behind that so that we're testing and we're coming up at least equivalent to that quality. Yeah, but at the same time, then bringing behind that, and it was good to catch Jean's comments just before I came on, where she was talking about clean ingredients and so forth. So you've got great tasting quality that's at least equivalent to the premium brand in that space. And then you've got the clean ingredients, responsible sourcing behind it, which comes as you're building your brand trust. I think one of the challenges in this space, Christopher, is about reducing the offer there so it disappoints. So, putting less cookies into a box, reducing the tomato content in there to hit a price point. You look at things as tin tuna as an example that comes in an oil or a brine. It really is about getting to that price point so you've got the value offer without diluting the quality or the volume of tuna in a tin, because that's just not being truthful and transparent to consumers. So I think you've got to be truthful, you've got to be transparent, and you've got to look at it from the eyes of a consumer. If they say, do I feel I'm getting great value, or do I feel I'm compromising because it's a value offer?
And if you're comparing to Aldi, the biggest watch out in comparing to Aldi is Aldi has very few true basic down and dirty value products.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically everything they're selling is national brand equivalent, mainstream. So they're not actually giving you a crappy product for a great price. They're giving you a great product for a great price.
And I think that's the advantage, because you're then looking to say, how do you bring in a value play that competes with that? Because you're not going to beat them on price, but you've got to be within a percentage. So many retailers, as we know, will have a percentage and says, look, I can't be any more than X away from that. If our customers coming in on a tight budget and they want to buy a tin of plum tomatoes for 60 cents, we've got to be able to offer it to them in that range. And that range is enough to keep them within the store generally.
So I'll go back to Canada, of course, to Loblaws. And No Name brand, also a yellow brand, honestly, is the most innovative design? No. Is it the greatest design? No. It's not as cheap and cheerful as that Asda you saw before. Where they're winning with this brand was about 5 years ago. They decided that the brand would have a personality, that they would go to market and actually speak to people. And they do TV commercials. And you can see this graphic here, just being playful and in your face. And they're wrapping yellow taxi cabs that just say taxi with the packaging. And they're wrapping buildings. And they're really promoting this with an attitude. So it's not discount, I'm embarrassed of it. It's put it in the front of your cart, in the top of your cart. It's still a great product at a great price. And go follow their Instagram. If you don't follow anybody else on Instagram, go follow No Name on Instagram, because it is the most fascinating thing in the world. They are funny. They are engaging. They're doing everything. You can actually download a virtual background that's a No Name virtual background for yourself. All of the things that you think they won't do at this tier, they're just breaking the rules and innovating in a marketing way with this brand that I think is really cool. I don't know about you, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. And I think if you were maybe a discount retailer looking into the Canadian market at the moment, the strength of that brand would make you really look at whether you've got an opportunity to win there. The challenge in many other markets, such as the UK and Australia, is we've got a really strong global discounter that's in the market. And I think the retailers are trying the best to compete against that in a slightly different strategy, and can't afford to be as bold and upfront as maybe we're seeing in Canada, Christopher.
Yeah, and Aldi doesn't play in Canada. So.
No, exactly. It's been a conversation very much this week, yeah.
And a lot of people wish they would. Next, Fred and Flo from Tesco.
Yeah, so the reason I put that, it wasn't because it's a pseudo brand, and I know one of your questions to Gene earlier was about the pseudo brand, but I think when we talk about that journey from trust, and the slide we were just talking about now, the Asda value is about trying to build trust because you've got the value play before you then get up into the ultimate chip cookie that we've talked about. I always say that if you can get enough customer trust to buy products in the healthcare or the beauty space, where people are going to buy something that's cheaper than the brand and it's carrying your name and they're going to use it on their baby or their self, you really are starting to build trust. And I think what I was keen to illustrate through our chat this afternoon is that the retailers are building trust, and they're building significant trust. And as we get further into the conversation around, okay, what's the limit? Where's the sky? How far can they go? They're getting great momentum in building trust and customer loyalty now. And I think that really opens up where they can go from an innovation space. But every time I'm in the supermarket, as you look at the strength of this category, whilst it's incredibly competitive, if consumers are willing to buy this product, that's an indication to me that they really are trusting these private labels.
And honestly, I don't use terms like pseudo brands. We call them retailer-owned brands. In this case, It's a Tesco-owned brand. And I think the innovative piece around that conversation is, if you think of yourself as a private label, as a pseudo brand, as a fancy brand, whatever words you want to use it, and you're qualifying the brands you own, you're not managing them to their potential, because customers don't look at this and think, oh, it's fake. I promise you they don't know. And then when I go to Walmart and they have a similar brand to this called Parents' Choice, doesn't say Walmart on it anywhere, and it dominates. People just buy it. So, be confident, be bold in your brand choices. I think it's the way of the future, honestly. So up next, I love this one from M&S. So Marks and Spencer in England.
This was fantastic for a number of reasons. They launched it in January, and I was lucky enough to be in the UK when they launched it. I think a couple of things I would really say about this. January, as with many markets, you've come out of Christmas and New Year, that plethora of healthy choices launching the retailers. M&S absolutely own the space with this. But what I really like about this is an example of a leading private label business, as you talked about earlier, working with external partners to bring science into a product there that's in the growth category. There's lots of gut shots out there at the moment. There's lots of that type of stuff. Yakult and others have been around for a long time. I'm sure most of the people on the call have got a private version of Yakult that's coming out of Asia and so on and so forth. It's not new. But the fact that M&S did it and they put it in with some science, some new science behind it, some external accreditation, says actually we can take this to the next level. And the first week they openly said they couldn't keep up with supply and demand across the stores. They're on top of that now, but it's working really well. And I think actually if you can bring academic research, link it with a customer need, and bring it to market in a way it's affordable and great quality, I think it's an indication of where it can go next. And I think it's also an indication of how the expectations around what do I want from a contract manufacturer to support my growth for the future is starting to change.
And so for those that aren't familiar with Zoe, Zoe is a scientific company. And there's lots of videos they've filmed and they talk about this gut shot and how it's better for your health. And they talk about the research. So this is a collaboration, right? And it's certainly not the first collaboration we've seen.
Yeah.
Lots of people do this, but it's a collaboration that came out boldly in the UK. There was bus signs, there was TV commercials, there was a whole 9 yards, and it builds both brands. So both Marks and Spencer and Zoe, and it's really moving the health and wellness conversation forward and attaching it to Marks and Spencer in a way that it wouldn't have had the credibility to do before.
Absolutely. And I think that just continues to build on the platform around when consumers are looking for food with functionality or food with healthier choices. What can you do and how can you influence that across food moving forward?
There's lots of great examples from the UK about collaborations. Heston Blumenthal's done stuff. He had Vegan Butchers and Derek Sarno coming to the plant-based piece. So if you're looking for those sort of examples, there's lots in the UK. But on this side of the pond, Costco and Kirkland Signature are really good at it as well. Target has everything from fashion to food. Diane von Furstenberg's in stores right now that they're doing really nice. You can actually have custom made private brand Diane von Furstenberg Target furniture made, which is super cool. So we encourage this conversation. How can you partner to do things better and bring more credibility and help your consumer? It's just smart.
I look at it from both sides, Christopher, and I think for the retailers moving forward, as they try to differentiate in this space and come away from the value conversation and start to continue to drive that improvement in food nutrition, food quality, food functionality, is it going to be the retailers bringing expertise to the table and then go into the supply base looking for capability? Or is it going to be the smart manufacturers that say, do you know what, we're going to partner with their version of Zoe based on their category, and we're going to take that to the retailers now to say, this is how we can take your existing private label products or your private brands. This is how we can innovate those products to take them to the next level and bring in a further level of nutritional functionality.
I think it's cool, honestly. So I'll bring a couple of examples forward. International foods for so long have been bad copies, or not even copies, bad localizations, whether it be American localization or British localization or Australian, doesn't matter. What we've seen over the last year is grocers jump into authentic, healthy, great tasting versions of international food. So in this case, it's Waitrose in their Japan menu product. You go out and look at Instagram and Pinterest and TikTok on these products, and the people are raving about them, and they're great prices and they taste good. The same sort of thing. These are obviously all ready meals, so we don't do those quite as much in the US, but Kroger launched a similar line. But obviously in the US, we have a huge Hispanic population, and they launched Mercado originally with, I think, about 100 products, and it's continuing to expand. That really changed the conversation for them around Hispanic food. Basically for, I don't know, the last 100 years, Hispanic food in an American grocery store has been terrible American copies of Taco Bell and just all these things that really didn't taste anything like you'd get in any Hispanic country. These are authentic products sourced from the correct country. They were developed by Hispanic people, whether it be from El Salvador or Mexico, you name it. So you get this queso fresco. Really thinking about where you're sourcing your product from. I don't know. I think it's all smart. I think it's as we all become more diverse and the flavors change and the world evolves. Hey, it's a great way to get more involved in food. And for a private brand to do interesting things.
Oh, it is for sure. And I think if I look at the Australian market for a second, Christopher, what we're seeing is the entry products in many cases being domestically made because you want a version of Italian pizzas and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But consumers are back traveling. They love authentic food. They love international cuisines. And what we're now seeing is those premium products coming into those areas that are sourced authentically, because that's taken you on that journey. And if you want a chili sauce, you want it to be an authentic chili sauce, not an Australian version of a chili sauce. So I think that authenticity and provenance is continuing to play a really important part across the grocery offer to make sure that they can offer consumers the taste experience they want. I think on the Waitrose example you shared, and fantastic products, been really impressed with those. When they launched those, they talked about using AI technology to help develop some of those meals. So
Wow.
it's probably the first example of a retailer I've seen between Australia and the UK, saying that we're actually using AI as part of our MPD process to take that vast customer data and bring it down into something that's meaningful. So yeah, that's a great example. Yeah.
And innovation comes at so many levels. So if you can get organizational innovation and thought innovation, and we all have more data than we actually know what to do with. It's just sitting there not doing anything most of the time. So if AI can help, why not? Ask questions.
Yeah, and I think following on from that, most people now wearing these watches now that tell you how your heart is, how your blood pressure is, and so on and so forth. So we're getting all that data now as people within the food industry. At some point, companies will really start to lead into that and say, how do we help consumers now control that better? And I think that's the next stage that we're really going to see some advancement. But the minute if you get something that spikes your glucose level, shouldn't have eaten it, so on and so forth, how do we bring that into product innovation and food development? I think that will be great. And is that land that the brands are going to own, or is that something that's going to be led by the private brand sector?
So let's talk about the future now, because obviously we've built this industry that was built on copying things, right? As I said earlier, and we don't need to lose that muscle. That's still a really
Yeah.
important thing to do. But what does the future look like, and what will it take to be more innovative, to engage consumers in a different way?
But we're seeing some great stuff at the minute from, we've touched on Marks and Spencer's there, but also in a smaller sector, we're looking at Holland and Barrett. Yeah, again, for those that don't know, traditionally a big health food chain in the UK, they've relaunched their food offer now, and you can buy what I would call is food with functionality, and they've really gone strong into that space and probably launched 200 products already in the last 6 months with more to come, taking them in a different area of business totally. And I think as retailers, regardless of size, have confidence in that space and start trialing things differently, I think consumers will start expecting more from their food. And I think that will open the door. I think the limiting factor is consumer acceptance or consumers' imagination. So I think the food with added functionality is definitely where I see the outlook going. We're seeing so many products now that are enriched with protein. As an example, you almost don't buy the traditional version because protein becomes second nature in our food. So I think it's really going to be around, here's the data that we're getting on consumers. How do we link that back to a food and a purpose so consumers can continue to take greater control of their own health and wellness?
So what resources are we going to need? Do we have the manufacturers, the suppliers, the research firms, the whatever? What is it going to take? What do we need to add to the industry?
I think we're very fortunate if we take a global view on the contract manufacturing or the food manufacturing capability we have. I think our biggest challenge, Christopher, is to line everybody up and say, this is what we're going to deliver. This is going to be the strategy. It's bringing those pieces together as opposed to there being a significant partner missing at the table. Yeah, and with the continued focus on value, I think it means that we're firefighting to make sure that we're winning in a market with still an increasing level of inflation, which takes up your day activity. You've got to have the team and the confidence that actually once we come through the challenges of inflation and supply chain issues that we're still seeing in some of the markets, this is what the future of food's going to be like, who's going to lead it and what categories are going to do it in first. But I think it will come.
The great thing about private brand is we can source any product from anywhere in the world at any quality. We're not restricted to our own facilities. If we have them, great. If not, that's okay. For those of you worried about China, China also makes this, right? They can make a quality product. It's not a problem.
Yeah. You imagine, I know we were lucky enough to spend some time together in Chicago in November, but you imagine the PLMA or a show of that equivalent in 5 or 10 years' time, where we're walking on to stands and we've got manufacturers there with great capability, and they've got science and technical resources behind products to the same standard that we're seeing from a process capability at the moment. That becomes a really powerful conversation there, where we've got scientists, we've got access to money, we've got access to tech that says, let's bring that together and let's change or improve some of the foods that we've benefited from for a long time.
And it calls just what you said and I said earlier, and Gene said, you got to know what your strategy is, because if I can go to this really smart manufacturer who has scientists, I need to give them some direction. I need to
Yes.
tell them who I am, who my customer is, what my goals are. Otherwise, it's all random.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the short term, we will end up with some very clever scientists that play that role of facilitating and bringing retailers and manufacturers together to try things. But I think ultimately, if you say, what does it look like in the future? Success is having that capability within your own business, whether it's going to be retailer driven or supplier driven. But to do that, you've got to have absolute clear line of sight to what does success look like in this space and what are we aiming for? Because if not, you could spend a lot of money on resource, a lot of money on development, and actually never bring it to market and never connect with the problem that the consumers have that we're trying to solve, which has got to be fundamental to how we do it. Start with the consumer, work our way back and say, what problem are we trying to solve and how do we address it?
And I like to tell them, stop waiting to be given permission.
Yep.
There's no national brand out there going, or even the Liquid Deaths and all these up and coming guys that sat back and went, I can't do anything yet. Customers haven't given me permission. That's not a thing.
No, always better to ask for forgiveness. Yeah.
If you're wrong, you learn from it and you move on. It's not the end of the world, people.
It's not. It's only food, and we're seeing a lot more agile approaches to innovation now in the market, which means you can try it fast, you can learn from the data, you can bring it back, you can refine, and you can go again. What we've got to be clear is what direction are we aiming in? Because if we trip over, we got to get up and we got to go again.
All right, so we're going to close out. 2 questions. Same question, but 2 different audiences. Okay, so if you could give one piece of advice to retailers about innovation, what would it be?
Ooh. I think that really depends how far out we're looking, Christopher. I think if we're taking the longer view, the way in which we've done innovation has been really successful, but I don't think that's a long term for innovation. I think that needs to change. I think there needs to be different people at the table as we take a longer term view on innovation capabilities and expectations.
Same question, but for manufacturers. What one piece of advice?
I think it's almost the same answer, because I think if I was at a trade show and you're pitching to me as a manufacturer, I would say there's that missing piece, because we can all make a UHT milk, we can all make a yogurt, we can all make those products. What we're looking for is that food to be a great quality, great tasting carrier of something, and then add in some functionality to it in a natural way that meets that consumer need. And so I think both sides of the table, Christopher, there needs to be another party at that table to really unlock that value. Where's your Zoe would be my question.
And what I would say to the manufacturers is, particularly in the US, yes, it has become a procurement-based environment. Yes, it goes straight to some sort of computerized robot thing.
Yeah.
But if you're not constantly telling retailers about what you're doing for innovation, you are missing the boat. Even if they don't buy it, you want them to perceive you as being innovative. They can say no 100 times, but if they pick up that 101st one to remember you, that might be what keeps you in the game.
Absolutely. I'm coming out of Melbourne. I'm a big fan of coffee. You see the way that coffee is being innovative now in the ground coffee at the minute, where they're putting relaxation into it, mood into it, energy into it through the addition of things such as lion mane and so forth. When you see categories like that having innovation coming in, I just think that's incredibly exciting, because it's starting to indicate that things are changing and changing at pace.
Great conversation and perspective. All right. Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you.
Thanks.